know. The shadow's doing something for my shoulders, man.
You look like a Bond villain, man.
There we go.
Testing. Ooh. All right. Are we getting an echo?
Oh.
Okay. Man, this lighting is not doing me any favors.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's muting now. That would have been hilarious. All right. Are we good? Perfect. All right, everyone. So welcome. This is a meetup in conjunction with GDG, Code Connector, and I think that's it, right? Yeah. All right. So, Memtech as well. Good. We are hosted here at the FedEx Institute of Technology, the FIT. Thank you very much for the people that made this possible. And there we go. That's what I'm talking about. Okay. Are you not entertained? Okay, I'm done now. All right. So huge thank you to Vaco for sponsoring us. Right up there, the gentleman that you cannot see. So welcome one, welcome all. If this is your first tech meetup, don't worry, there will be plenty more. What can I say? I mean, I'm not very comfortable up here, as y'all can see. But that's the whole point of this, right? We're here because we're making that movement. We're getting out of our comfort zone, and we're trying to transition into tech. We have a star-studded panel up here of people who have done that and who volunteer their time so graciously to help get everyone the information that they can use to level up and to move into that next step. So first up, if you don't know him, what are you doing? You're literally in Memphis. We have Danny Thompson, who recently started a new role, right? Where are you working from now?
AutoZone.
AutoZone, great. Is that your logo in the back? Is that the company logo? Okay, perfect. We have
Pamela Wolf.
Pamela Wolf, an integrations manager at St. Jude. Perfect. I had note cards on my hand, but then I washed it from the tacos. My bad. All right, we have Marc Badrian, a lead software engineer with Disney.
That's right. Yep.
I have no idea what I'm doing here, y'all. I'm winging it. I am so nervous. You have no idea. And last but certainly not least, we have the man who actually taught me how to code, who taught Danny how to code, the leader of the Learn, Build, Teach community, Mr. James Quigg. Say hi to everyone.
What's up?
All right. So now that my horrible introductions are out of the way, a couple of housekeeping rules. Number one, the chat Q&A is open. If you have a question, please feel free to ask it there, and it will be addressed as it comes up. Number two, keep the chat clean, guys. Nothing obscene, nothing profane, nothing bad, etc. And I think that's it. I'm gonna hand it off to someone who actually knows how to speak in public. Really, anyone up here?
Oh, what am I saying? Well, I assumed it was going to you, and I was going to make a joke to go for the mic, and then he gave it to me. So I'm going to pass it to Danny because I don't know there was no question.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for coming out today. I really want to give a round of applause for Isaac here because he definitely stepped out of his comfort zone. He was not comfortable coming up here. We made him kind of do it. I'm excited that he did it. But that's one big thing about tonight, and that's going to be the overall theme. I've already spoken to a couple people who have never been to a meetup before in their life. They were nervous about this experience. They kind of came out of their comfort zone to come attend this event. And for me, I take that as a huge responsibility. My ultimate goal right now is to make sure that this is completely worth the journey, the experience, and the time that you're going to be spending here. So I've already spoken to a lot of the speakers already. I know a lot of the questions that we're going to be gearing here. I tried to go above and beyond and bring very qualified individuals that can give you actual, tangible, and real advice to help you get to that next stage in your journey, your career, how to level up, all that good stuff, okay? The other thing that I want to say here in a big way is if you are joining us on the chat, can you do me a favor right now? Because I kind of want to get an idea for what everyone's kind of what their goals are, what they know. What is the current languages that you're working in right now that you've learned, that you're experimenting with? I'm also going to go around the room and kind of get some ideas. But what languages or tools do you utilize? I see some people typing JavaScript. I see JavaScript. I see C++, better person than me right now. I see React and all that good stuff as well. So please make sure you're dropping that in the chat. I see it. I see Python. That's fantastic. What about y'all? How many people in here utilize JavaScript? Show of hands. JavaScript. I see JavaScript with a big smile over there. He's good. JavaScript right there. What about .NET? Any .NET people in the house? We got .NET. Oh, he falsified the .NET. We're vetoing that. .NET. I got an interesting one right there. Couple things. Number one, I made sure that we brought out a couple hiring managers and recruiters. Make those connections if you can. Get some feedback from them. Make yourself more marketable as a candidate for the overall industry as a whole. We also have some amazing recruiters. So Justin here and Robert here are representing Vaco, who is an amazing recruiter in Memphis, Tennessee. They're the reason why we got the tacos that we got. So if you're not in person, I feel bad for y'all, man. The tacos were great. I feel full. The stomach's kind of poking out the shirt a little bit. I can kind of see that on the camera, but it was well worth it. The other thing that I would say here is kind of giving you an understanding and an idea. If you don't know who I am, just a quick background, because I know I was talking on the chat earlier and some people don't know who I am. They just kind of found out about the meetup, which is fantastic. It means that we did our job pretty well in advertising this event. But for those that don't know, I spent over 11 years of my life frying chicken in gas stations. It's literally all I knew what to do for the entirety of my life. I worked 100-hour weeks. I was killing myself, and I made just enough money to still be broke and still question why I was doing these things. And I started learning how to code. And to be honest, I've talked about this a couple times. The reason why I learned how to code was because of a rapper. This rapper invested $7 million into a tech company. And I was like, why is he investing this money in a tech company? And at this time in my life, I was 30 years old working in the gas station. I said, all right, I'm at a fork in the road here. If I go right, I'm going to stay in this gas station until the day I die. If I go left, I've got to make a change. It's got to be now, and I don't know what it is. And it just so happened at that time, I saw this interview. And he's investing this money. He said, why are you investing in a tech company, right? It's not like he's about to give up his lucrative rap career to work tech. And he said, I'm learning how to code. Now, this blew my mind because I never knew somebody from my kind of background could ever learn how to code. I thought this was reserved for the PhDs and the rocket scientists of the world, not average individuals that barely made it through school. He starts learning how to code, and so do I. I got on freecodecamp.org. If you know me at all, I will forever recommend that as one of the best places you can start. You can start learning how to code, or at least writing your first line of code in 90 seconds. If you haven't tried it, highly recommend it. But I started going to Free Code Camp, and I was learning. I was getting all these concepts, and I heard about this thing called meetups, right? I still say this to this day, and I mean this in this room right now. I owe my entire career to meetups. If it wasn't for meetups, it wasn't for the people at meetups, it wasn't for the experience at meetups, there's no way I would have known what the market was. There's no way I would have made the connections I made. There's no way I would have learned the concepts that I did. There's no way I would have been as intimidated or as like challenge overcoming if I didn't go to meetups. And I remember I went to this first meetup I ever went to, and it was a Code Connector meetup. So huge shout out to Code Connector. If you are in the Memphis area, so I'm talking to the folks in this room, highly recommend checking out Code Connector. Amazing group of people. Some of the leaders for that group right here, JC Smiley, Lawrence Lockhart, James Q Quick himself. Highly recommend it. But I remember going to this meetup, and I thought I could cure cancer with code. Like, I thought I knew it all. I knew HTML, CSS, y'all, and I thought the world began and ended at JavaScript. So I was like, I'm near the finish line. And I made this application where it's like, you enter the URL of an image, and it returns the image with like some coloring on top. Like, it was like Instagram's worst nightmare of the worst filter in the world. But I was so proud of this. I was like, oh, this is everything. And I instantly walk in this meetup, and I instantly realized that I don't know stuff. I don't know anything. People are speaking like foreign languages to me. They're talking about C# and Java and SQL, and I don't know what any of this means. But now I'm hooked. Now I'm like, okay, I've been introduced to this brand new breadth of knowledge that I didn't know existed. So I start going and I start learning more. And I said, one problem that I felt in that meetup, right? I was standing on the side, and I remember like sitting at the table very, very quiet, because I said, I can't contribute to any of these conversations because I don't feel like I know anything. Like, I've never felt Well, to be honest, I've always felt like I'm the dumbest person in the room. I still feel like that right now, especially when I'm looking at this panel. Like, I feel like I'm the dumbest person up here. But I remember saying, I can't even contribute to the overall conversation. So I went home and I started studying. I learned everything about JavaScript and ES6 functions. I went to the next meeting and said, do you know what error function is? You know how to do this in ES6? And I remember feeling so cool about how, like, ternary operators and stuff. And I went home and I started learning more about SQL. I went home and started learning more about Java. And now I found myself introduced brand new, amazing community that just was existing to help folks. And that's why I think it's so imperative to surround yourself with a community, because number one, you're making connections within the community, whether you realize it or not. Number two, your activity within a community is noticed by others, even if they're not active in the conversation with you. It's imperative that you do stuff like this. You never know where one conversation can take you, genuinely. The other thing that I say with community is I did something that I don't see a lot of people doing. I went for unofficial code reviews. And I was just telling people, tear it apart. What could I do better? What could I do worse? What am I not doing right? All the information made it so valuable that when I started going for code interviews, my code was a light years ahead of a lot of other people, especially when it came to the subject of Java. Java was huge to me. That's what I did all my coding interviews with. Guess what? One of the biggest things with that, I was starting to use some practices from senior developers and mid-level developers that were interviewing my code before I got my first job in tech. That helped me stand out in a huge, huge way. It's also one thing why I tell people sometimes it's great to go to a meetup, even if it has nothing to do with what you're doing right now. The insight into that market, the insight into everything that's happening. I went to .NET meetups. I went to cloud meetups. I don't know anything about cloud, y'all. And I was going to cloud meetups. I was learning about data warehouse. I was all this stuff. And I remember I went to a Go meetup. What's funny enough is Mark and I worked at the same company. And when we switched to Go, I had a slight edge because I had already gone to a meetup and I had known about some of the practices that people utilize in Go. That's why it's so important to go to these events. So sometimes it's great to go to an event where it's primarily focused on what you're doing, but it's also great just to be there for that community, because guess what? All those people are going to pay attention to your attendance there. And so tonight, number one, thank you for being a part of the community. This is your local community, right? Like, nobody else represents Memphis Tech besides you at this point. So it's great to be a part of it. It's great to make these connections. But also, we're going to be going down the line right now. And I kind of am going to start asking some questions. I see the chat. I see some contributions already over there. By the way, if you're in the chat and you have an answer to somebody's question, drop it. Be respectful and all the good stuff. I see some stuff. I see Sherry over there. I see William. I see Nika. I see Alex Patterson. Alex, what is going on? Alex is very good people, by the way. And huge shout out, by the way. I was going to do this anyway later on, but I'm going to do it now. If you are into open source, or if you're into joining a great community online, check out the AppWrite community. Highly, highly recommend them. Amazing people, an amazing team. We talk constantly all the time in the background. Really top grade folks. Highly, highly recommend checking out the community. And what's funny is their Discord, crazy active. Like the passion that people have for that project, amazing. If that's something you want to be into, highly recommend checking that out. Now, I kind of want to go down the line here, and maybe I can start with Mark and we can kind of skip around a little bit. But I kind of want to have the goal tonight of, like, what are several tips that you could kind of give to somebody that is trying to go from I'm learning this concept to now I want to implement this and get a job in tech. What are things that you could pay attention to, or maybe even, I don't know, prepare yourself for to stand out as a candidate, or at least be a better version of a candidate of what they may be at the moment? I'll start with Mark.
Okay, yeah. Hi, Marc Badrian. Tips about things you could do when you're learning and you're trying to break in. One thing, everyone's always learning, right? That's something that you're going to continue to do if you're going to work in this field forever. But doing projects, if you're not going a conventional route, you're not getting a certificate, you're not getting a degree, you're just learning on your own. Whatever avenue you happen to take, work on projects. And create a GitLab account, a GitHub account, store your code, have it to where you can show it off if you need to. If you have a website, simple website that you set up, even if it's just HTML and, static CSS, and it's hosted somewhere and you can, have a link that it's on your profile. If you have something to show, then that shows that you've done the work, right? You've done something to learn. You have something to put forward. You have something to showcase. Also, if you're learning and you're going for jobs and you're interviewing, be upfront, be honest with the things you know, the things you don't know, right? No one's expected to know everything, and it's okay if you don't know everything that's listed on job requirements, on a description that you see. If you are familiar and have half of the experience that's needed, apply to the job. You never know. You get in there to talk with somebody and you relay your experience, you relay what it is you know and what you can do, and express desire and eagerness for the things that you can't. And it really goes a long way, especially if it's something that you're passionate about and something that you want to do. It means a great deal. I went back to school to get a degree in computer science in a really unconventional kind of way, because I originally wanted to be a screenwriter, and that didn't work out the way that I wanted it to. Ultimately, doing that career shift, going back to school, I did have the degree and I had jobs. I worked in this building as a part of the name data networking project and the networking research lab here when I went back to school. But when you have that experience, when you're applying to jobs, you just have to put yourself out there and you just have to apply to stuff. That was sort of a rambling answer, but I would say three things: do projects, mess around with stuff. It's okay if you mess up. It's okay if you start a project and abandon it because it's just not what you wanted it to be and you hate it. It's okay. Pick something else up, do something else, store your code. Be honest and upfront in interviews, and just be open to what you know, what you don't know, and what you want to learn.
Love that. What about you, Pamela?
Hi, Pamela Wolf here. I have three different backgrounds here, so learned everything I needed for coding, programming, computers, the IT world. I've been doing this a little over 30 years now, but joined in the Air Force. And in the Air Force, as many of you know, there's no such thing as that's not my job. Which is a good thing. So we were exposed to many things. But one thing that I will always say to people who are trying to break into a field, especially IT, don't be afraid to stand up and volunteer. Oftentimes, people are looking for people who are willing because some people that are able aren't willing. And that attitude sometimes takes you farther than character, because we can train you how to do the work. It's the attitude, the character that helps push you through. Being inquisitive, signing up for events like this. But one of the things that I share with people, and many may not know, I work at St. Jude, but we have internship programs. Ask, volunteer, because that is another way to enter into a company, because you get those internships. You're working actually with assignments in those projects with teams that notice. They notice who's willing, who they have to prompt to do the work, and who's just eager to learn more. We have three recent employees that came onto St. Jude by way of the internship program. And that's everything, because I often hear from others, you work at St. Jude, that's a hard place to get into. But internships are a good way to get in. Code Academy. I signed my team up. I lead the integration team for St. Jude, but as you know, technology changes moment to moment. So staying abreast, and like Mark shared, do those projects on Code Academy. They actually have real world projects that you can do, that you can store, you can share. When you show up for an interview, you may be able to say, no, I have not done this for a company, but I work on this particular site with real world projects, and here's my work. Oftentimes we have people in the department that have gone to school and taken a class but have never done a project. That puts you ahead of the curve right there, because initiative, that willingness, that's everything in this world. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. You learn more by failing at something in the IT world than you do when it goes right. Because one, you're already a better troubleshooter, because you had to dig down deep to get it. That comes back up. That's lessons learned. It's documented. you're able to say, that problem I've experienced here it just sharpens your tools. Be willing to ask questions of others. How did you get here? Do you need help? How can I be a part of it? Projects, character, that willingness to step forward and do the work. And sometimes, guys, be willing to take the help desk entry position into a job. When I first got out of the Air Force, I had over 11 years of experience, system administrator, web developer, server admin, you name it, integration with Unix, different systems for the Air Force. And I really wanted to work at Methodist, but here's the thing. They didn't have anything open at the time in the department where I wanted to be. They had a position open in the help desk. I said, well, I will take it. I took the position, and before my probation period was up, the director of that department came to me and they interviewed me for a job I didn't apply for. Sometimes you got to get your foot in the door. And as my grandmother would say, sometimes we have to do what we don't want to do in order to get where we have to go. Getting in the door, because once you're in the door, you're learning, you're growing, you have opportunities to meet with other teams, expand what you know. And oftentimes, most companies have the mentality of promoting from within. And you're in the door, you're learning. They pay for school. You go back to school, you get the degree, and you're in there. So I just want to share that willingness to keep pushing forward, keep trying, don't give up. Go take the position that gets you in the door and work to get where you need to be. I took a demotion coming to St. Jude, and I get so excited about IT, but I'm gonna pass the mic here. But I get so excited because I left Methodist leading the integration team to take the position at St. Jude. Once again, didn't apply, got a call to say, hey, heard about you. Here's what we got. Would you be interested in coming in for an interview? And then can you go ahead and apply for this online? I took a demotion to come to St. Jude. Within 6 months, that's probation period, I was leading the department. So don't be afraid to step down in order to go up as well.
A lot of really good stuff so far. And I'm just going to kind of piggyback on all of the above. So I want to touch on projects, which you started to talk about, Mark. Projects are the thing that you have to have. You have to be able to go into an interview and have something that you can talk about. The problem that a lot of people make is that they follow a tutorial that they find on YouTube. I do YouTube videos and tutorials and courses, and then they call it done and they list that on their portfolio. They then go and they try to talk about the thing that they just followed on YouTube. The problem with that is that it doesn't really show anything about you. It just shows that you followed a tutorial. You can go and watch and copy code as I write it in a video. You can do all those things, but you're not necessarily really learning. And it's the same thing that now thousands of other people have done on their resume and their portfolio projects as well. So what I always tell people is you can start with that as a base, but make sure you take 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, however many features beyond that to really make it your own. Because another perspective of this, and I've been on the interviewing side, I've looked at people's resumes and I've looked at their portfolio projects that they've deployed, and I've recognized the tutorial that they got it from. That's really not a good look. You want to have something that's unique to you. You can talk about like building or following a tutorial, but then tell me what you did with it to make it your own, and tell me what you added on top of that. And I'll give you a personal story of this. This was in no way an intentional move in my career. I just wanted to learn how to do Android apps, and this was in college. And I got a computer science degree, which is like basically worthless. Like my knowledge, like my investment into the degree, not that the degree was worthless, but I wanted to learn how to do Android. Somebody gave me a textbook. I was following tutorials. I got bored. I wanted to build a Harry Potter trivia app. Big Harry Potter nerd. And so I did it. I Googled everything I needed to know along the way. I didn't know anything about Android going into it, and I just Googled everything. And that's what I talked about in 90% of my conversations with, at the time, one of the top tech companies in the world, and Microsoft, which is where I started my career. So that Harry Potter app, which seems whimsical, it seems silly. That's what I talked about in 90% of my interviews, because it was very personal. It was different, and it showed the passion, the excitement, the ability to learn, etc. The other thing, I've worked with a lot of people going through boot camp. I've taught a couple of rounds of a boot camp. I've worked with a lot of people in the community. getting started. And the biggest thing that people lack is the ability to explain their why and communicate their story. So going back to experience in the Air Force, or I forget your experience before, screenwriter is what you wanted to be. What people often forget, and a lot of us here online or in person are going through a transition from something that you've been doing for a certain amount of years into trying to get into tech, and you feel like you're starting from ground zero. You have professional experience to lean back on and to talk about confidently that then makes you a better professional. Most people just don't know how to communicate that. Most people don't know how to craft their story for what their experience is into why that's going to be beneficial for a company. And they go in with this heads down attitude, like they're going to be so lucky if they get a job and they have nothing to offer. You just have to figure out what that thing is that you have to offer. And I'll give you like my why at this point. My why is that I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher by heart. So if you bring me onto your team, no matter what we're doing, I'm going to help make other people around me better because I enjoy teaching people. As we have a new technology that we need to adopt, I'm going to learn it and I'm going to help everybody else learn it as well. Being a teacher is not necessarily a direct correlation to being a good developer. Not necessarily. Like that's not directly, I'm not really good at JavaScript. I'm a teacher. That's the thing that I can go in no matter what the job is, and I can confidently sell myself as a teacher because I know my story, I know my why, and I believe in it, and I can tell you that confidently, and I can sell you on it. Most people, if you're in a job seeking time period now, ask yourself if you know what that story is, and if you can come up here and tell me why you're a badass and be super confident about it. That's going to make all the difference in the world. So look back at the experience that you do have, learn to talk about yourself confidently. Confidence is a practice skill. Most people probably think they're just not confident. You practice it just like anything else. Go talk in front of a mirror, go talk to other people, practice that, become more confident, learn how to craft your story, and go and tell that in your interviews.
I think there's been some pretty exceptional points shared, and I'm going to quickly go over. You want to write this down? This is like a note-taking moment, I think. These are, for me, the top 6 things you need to do if you're trying to get your first job in tech. I lay this out all the time, but I'm going to go into a little bit of detail to kind of explain this. Number 1, you have to have the technical ability. There's just no way around that. I see time and time again when I get approached by people saying, I'm trying to get my first job, I'm trying to get my first job. The one area that it seems to be that they skip over the most is the focus on building up this technical ability. The fact of the matter is this, and this is a mindset shift that I'm trying to change. There's absolutely no shortage of people to write lines of code. Boot camps are churning out people left and right. If you go to 100 Devs, for example, if you go to any of their online classes, which is a phenomenal program, by the way, thousands of people are there. There's no shortage of people to write lines of code. The actual shortage in this industry is with problem solvers. And if you're now able to take this coding syntax that you're utilizing to now solve a problem, you're going to be very valuable. That's where the mindset shift has to be. It's not necessarily writing code. It's solving a problem with the code that you're delivering. Because here's one thing, and I actually was thinking about this today in a meeting. There's very few areas of a business that directly reflect the bottom line of that business so drastically in the way that IT software development can affect an online business. Very few areas. So now you're generating revenue, you're hindering revenue, you're adding to the expansion of a company, or you're directly resulting in the decrease of positions because of what you can do with code. So technical ability, that's number 1. I see oftentimes, hey, you need to go ahead and, what are you doing there? Oh, this fool. Anyway, he's trying to be funny. Anyway, and try is the key word there. But anyway, the other thing that I'll say is, number 2, after technical ability, you need to give yourself the permission to take your time and actually learn this stuff. I can't tell you how often we come across these conversations where just the other day I had somebody literally tweet at me saying, I've been trying to get a job forever. Nobody's hiring junior devs. I've been trying to get a job forever. I'm like, wow, this person's like really, really discouraged. Let me jump on a conversation with them. I'm like, how long's forever? Like, what are we talking about? He's like, 4 months. 4 months? Forever? Like a little longer than a summer vacation for a kid in school? That's forever to you? Like, people are often believing this rhetoric from a lot of online boot camps or even in-person boot camps where they're saying like 3 months, you're going to become a software developer. 90 days to make 6 figures. 90 days? You know that show 90 Day Fiance? They can't even get a damn fiance in 90 days. You're going to get a brand new career? Y'all online don't know there's 2,000 people here. They all laughed. That was a funny joke. That was funny. Yeah. Yeah, probably easier. Yeah. So please understand, you need to give yourself the permission to actually take your time and learn this stuff. And I remember I talked about this a while ago that honestly, this is also through another tweet conversation. Somebody was like, I'm 26 and I'm learning how to code. And this is taking forever. And I was like, all right, you're going to be 28 in 2 years. You could be 28 working in software, or you could be 28 still working at the dry cleaners you're working at. What 28 do you want? It's completely up to you. It doesn't matter if it takes you a little bit longer. It doesn't matter if you have to put more effort in. To be completely honest with you, I swear to God, I feel like this. I need to study concepts 5 or 6 times in a row before it finally sticks. I'm working 5 times harder just to be at the same level somebody's barely trying at. It doesn't mean I'm going to stop. I still got to learn this stuff. So number 2, give yourself the actual time necessary to learn and grow. Because here's the thing, we're not racing to some arbitrary line to just get a job. You can get a job anywhere. The reality is we're building careers. You want to look at this moment 10, 20, 30 years from now when you're in a much different financial situation and lifestyle, really blowing up and doing amazing things. Don't be so short-sighted and cutting your own corners and hurting yourself in the process. Self-harm is what we're trying to avoid here. Number 3, LinkedIn. I talk about LinkedIn all the time. I never wanted to be the LinkedIn guy, but guess what? LinkedIn. You need to invest time in LinkedIn. It's one of the few things you can do truly that pays dividends and costs you nothing. The network you can develop on LinkedIn, incredible. LinkedIn, 675 monthly million users, of which 85 to 90 million users on a monthly basis are recruiters, hiring managers, and decision makers for businesses. You need to stand out where they hang out. If they're at a bar, I tell you go grab a drink. If they're at a gym, I tell you learn how to work out. Guess what? They're on LinkedIn and they're actively working and utilizing this feature to reach people, make their job easier. A good profile doesn't require you being a social media influencer where you're on LinkedIn every single hour of the day making posts. You can make a post every couple of weeks and have a great profile. But you need to put the necessary information for when you talk to somebody or you reach out to somebody. The first thing that they're going to do is after you DM them or comment on the post, they're going to check out your profile. If that shows you in the right light, conversations will start. If it shows you in a negative light, you got nothing going for you, you got no projects on here, you got no contributions on there, if there's nothing on there, why would they want to talk to you? Put the necessary information. If you need help, I have the LinkedIn series. It's free. I'll never monetize this stuff. It exists to help you utilize it. Number 4, your portfolio site. I talk about this a lot. Your portfolio site, it's huge. It doesn't need to necessarily be technical, okay? And I think the recruiters and everyone here can kind of test to this, that if they go to your portfolio site, they're not like, what stack is this made in? Is this a React? Is this using React? No, they're not looking at that. Most of the time, the first level of hiring doesn't come from the actual engineering managers. It's by people in HR. They're not technical. Their specialty is people. I kind of equate them to like bus drivers. They're trying to pick up the most qualified passengers going to a destination to drop them off, right? So they're looking for that. Make it easier for them. Put out the right information. But here's the thing with that. It needs to be aesthetically pleasing. I don't care if you buy a template. I don't care if you pay somebody to make it. I don't care what you do. But to some level, it needs to look decent. And the reason why is because on a subliminal level, they're going to look at that website and say, this person probably knows what they're doing. Let me pass this on to the engineering manager to take a look at this. Now, understand one thing about your portfolio site, and this is very key here because I realize a lot of people don't understand the actual purpose of the portfolio site. It's not just to make something to say, I made this. It is you controlling the funnel of information that they're getting. The flow of information here is the most important aspect of the site. It doesn't matter what color scheme you use. It doesn't matter how your buttons look. How are you presenting and delivering the information that is necessary for them to make a decision on you? And that's why I often tell people, And I've seen this myself. Sometimes I see portfolio sites that look amazing from a developer perspective, but it's terrible from a business. Who's your audience? Is it me? Or is it the person that's going to decide if you get the check? Like, I saw a portfolio site all made in comic book font. That's so cool. No one's going to hire you. Number 4, this is where we're getting interesting now. Your portfolio items, the projects that you're delivering. We've talked about projects quite a lot, right? Portfolio projects. Now, I'm going to tell you this. I truly believe that there are several projects. You can check it out. I have a Twitter thread on this, on the kind of projects you can make that will really make you stand out. Number 1, I always talk about solving a problem that you understand or know about. The reason why, very key here. If you identify with that problem, you know why that problem exists. Prime example, I had a student who I was teaching. He worked at a burger restaurant. He was complaining one day, his back hurt. He threw out like over 40 pounds of expired product. And I was like, man, that's your project. Whether you realize it or not, that's your project. What if you made a project that took in the dates of the deliveries as it came in? It made an alert several days before it expired to make sure like employees rotated it. And now you have a project that not only has a real business focus to what you're doing in your job, it also saving the business money because you're reducing spoilage, and you're making processes easier for a lot of the employees. It's a win-win-win. How many projects can you think of that are going on in your life, simple as it may be, whatever little tiny problem you got, automate it, create a process for it. The other thing is, I always talk about making e-commerce sites, right? But the purpose and how you package it means more than the actual project. Like, prime example, I made a clothing store website. Doesn't really sound impressive. What if you made a clothing store website that had a backend that would order a product for you when that product got low? I just, little tweak, totally amplified the level and quality of that product. And these are the kinds of projects that hiring managers love to hear about, because you're solving problems in the process. Solving problems. All right. Number 6, you got to have a good resume. Now, I put resume as number 6 intentionally because I think the other items carry more weight here. But you can't disregard the resume. And the one point that I'm going to share here is, with your resume and LinkedIn, this is both. Stop telling folks the basic duties of your job. If you're a cashier, I know you ring up customers. I know you bag groceries. What did you do in that role? You had that job for 2 years. You did something to show someone somewhere that you're great at your job. What was it? We want to know about it. Why do you keep telling folks, yeah, I was a barista, I made coffee? Yeah, I know you did. But what did you do in the role? Small wins can still be big. That's why I often tell people, keep a notebook by you, and at the end of the day, write down whatever it is. Because I guarantee you're going to forget about all those wins, and you're going to think broad stroke at the end of the year, as opposed to all the details that happen with that role. If you do those 6, you're going to increase your odds exponentially of landing a job in tech. I promise that. Now, going back to the panel, I have a question. In the interview process itself, someone's actually at the interview. They did all the advice, they followed, they made the projects, they learned through project-based learning, all that good stuff. What could they do within that interview to truly make them stand out a little bit more? Is it perhaps something on discussing the projects they made, or could it be something else along the lines of maybe preparing a speech? Like, what would you tell them how to really do well in the interview besides just being prepared to answer some questions? I'll start with Pamela this time.
All right, guys, I'm back. So one of the questions at St. Jude that we love to ask is not about the projects, because we're going to see that. Not whether you want the job, you showed up. But what we do ask, and this goes back to the confidence, there are many candidates there. You need to be able to tell us why we would want you on our team. So we tell them this, all modesty aside, why would you be the best candidate for this position? And believe it or not, something so simple as that question throws many people. They're not prepared to respond, but that's the selling point. That's where you get to sell yourself. So one of the things to think about, and it goes back to your why, the confidence. Why should we pick you? Because there are going to be people with projects just as great or on the par with yours. We know you're there. We know you want to be here, but why? Why you? So that's the selling point. And so I would really take that to heart, because some people were great on paper, but they could not tell us why we needed to select them. And in the end, that actually hurt them, and others sold themselves, because we have no way of really staying unless you just really stand out and other people are just not that qualified. But when you have 5 candidates that are very well qualified, there's something about you that you need to share with us. Why would you be the best candidate?
Thanks, ma'am. I'm going to piggyback off of that a little bit and say, just like you're saying with the why, be prepared to talk about yourself. Be prepared to, depending on what the job is and what the role is you're going for, what the company's like, you could go through 5 different rounds of interviews. The first one could be with the recruiter. They're not going to ask you anything technical. They're going to ask you about you. They're going to ask you maybe, well, what kind of stuff have you worked in? What kind of stuff have you learned? What do you normally like to do? And see, just generally speaking, if what is on your resume is what's coming out of your mouth. I mean, that's really their job there. And if everything vibes and you seem like you're a decent person, then you might go through to the next round according to them. If you do, then you'll hit a couple other interviews, and sometimes it might be just behavior-based questions. It might be behavior-based questions and then a technical round. They could be combined. It's really, you're unsure what you're going to get when you go into it sometimes. The behavior-based stuff, first of all, just know your resume, right? Be able to talk about yourself, be able to say within 3 or 5 minutes, look, this is me. I started here doing this, and I've learned this, and I worked there, and now I'm working here, and I'm, this sort of thing, right? Be able to tell your story in a really succinct, easy to understand kind of manner. Then, be prepared for some of these behavior questions. You can Google them. Most of the ones people are going to ask you are all there. I'll give you a couple that I like to give during interviews that it helps me understand who the person is and what they're about. One is, I like to ask, how do you learn? How do you learn something new? You're faced with a problem, you're not sure exactly what to do with about it. Are you given a task at work? What do you do? How do you learn? Love that question. It says a lot if you're able to talk about how you go from knowing nothing about what you're about to do to actually getting to the problem at hand and solving it. I also like to ask about if you can tell me a time that you failed, and tell me, what did you learn from that? How did you grow? Be prepared to answer some of these behavioral questions. No doubt that whatever technical job you go for, you're still going to get them, right? The technical side of things, that's a mixed bag. You never really know what to expect with them. I mean, if you're going for a front end position, maybe they'll ask you front end questions or back end questions, or if you're going full stack, who knows? A lot of times now they like to have live coding sessions where you log onto a website and you're going to answer, and they'll tell you, oh, just call this API and return this thing, whatever. Okay, there are sites that'll prepare you for this. You can do some leak code stuff. Don't freak out about it, and don't just do that, because that's not going to work if you just grind leak code. I don't think that's a good idea. But be prepared, comfortable with the scenario where you have some behavioral questions. You can talk about yourself, be confident, like it was already said here. And then when you get to the technical portion, take your time, go through the problem, ask questions. Oh my gosh, ask questions during an interview. Yes, if you get to a technical portion. And then, just relax, be yourself, and be as comfortable as you can be, and just do it. But
I got to stop going last because there's not all the things that we just said. I think the biggest thing for me actually comes before you actually get there. Like if you're walking into an interview and you're now whiteboarding for the first time, you're going to do a shitty job. That's a really tough thing to learn how to do on the spot. If you're walking in and you haven't rehearsed behavioral problem or behavioral questions beforehand, you're not going to do so good. There's in reality, there's no excuse not to have done 1,000 variations of behavioral questions with just yourself or with a family member or a friend or whatever. There's no reason that you shouldn't have already done that 1,000 times before walking in. And there's only with behavioral questions, there's tell me about a time you worked with someone. Tell me about a time that you struggled with something. Tell me a time that you had to learn something. Like there's not that many, there's different variations, but those are the kind of 3 core ones. So there's no reason not to prepare for that. The big thing though is just to have an idea of what you're walking into. Like you don't want to walk in and be surprised. And good companies with good HR and good interviewers will give you a heads up of what you're walking into, of what to expect, because they don't want to see a terrible version of you. They want to see what you're actually capable of. If you're walking to an interview and they want to bully you into submission, that's not the place you want to be in the first place. So you should be asking as many detailed questions before you walk into these interviews to know what to expect. Will it be behavioral? Will I have whiteboarding sessions? Will I have technical sessions? Who will be there? Can I get names of those people? Can I go and stalk them on LinkedIn? Can I reference a project they worked on or a language they work with because I saw it on LinkedIn? Everybody stalks. We don't have to be embarrassed about it. We do it every day. LinkedIn. Danny's the didn't want to be, but is the LinkedIn like cheer person. So all those things, there's no reason you should walk into an interview cold. There's no reason you should walk into an interview blind. You should ask for whatever those details are. And then whatever those become, you should have done that 1,000 times beforehand. I say 1,000 times. If you answer a behavioral question in 2 minutes, you can calculate how long it takes you to do 2,000 minutes worth of behavioral interviews. But there's no reason you shouldn't have done that, especially like we talk so much about community. All the communities that we've already referenced today, we've got 30-ish people here in the room. We've got, I don't know, however many online. This is a community. Like your community is the people that you're sitting next to, whether you know it or not. You all showed up for this random tech event on a Tuesday night. Like you've got something in common if you're here today. And that's the biggest thing that people miss out on is taking advantage in a good way of the resources that are around you. And Danny, I think you mentioned it too. When you realize how many people are out there that just want to help, now you feel a lot more comfortable actually taking advantage again in a good way of those resources around you. So as much preparation leading into the interview as possible, do all your research, do all your prep, ask what to expect, and go and prepare for that.
I'll add one thing. I thought somebody would have mentioned this, but I do often think this is one thing people don't think about until, but they do it or they should do it. Scour that company's website and social media pages before the interview. They put the information they want you to know on there. And if you can reference that in the interview, it's going to be huge. Please do your homework. Like they're putting that info out there. It's easy wins to utilize that in your answers. Highly, highly recommend doing that research. The other thing that I'll tell you to do as well, this is a tip that I've been giving out for a while. It's not going to necessarily help you in the interview, but it's going to help you have the right mindset into whether you should be interviewing at that company or not. Reach out to existing people that work there saying, hey, I'm interviewing at XYZ. I'd really like your input in, should this be a place that I'm looking at? Is there something that I should be paying attention to? But I also take it one step further because LinkedIn is awesome and has a great search feature. I reach out to past employees. They have no bias to tell me the good, the bad, and the ugly. That has saved me from several experiences that I probably would have been mad at. Highly recommend doing that. Reach out to those developers, regardless of their position, because they're going to tell you the truth. Like they have no financial incentive to tell you something different. Whereas somebody drinking the Kool-Aid may say, this is the best place in the world, but in the reality, they're giving interviews for other places and they don't want to snitch on themselves, right? So make sure you're doing that little bit of research. It goes a long, long way. The other thing is, please don't be afraid to ask questions. And I actually made a poll about this the other day. I forget the company that released this huge study on interviews and the questions to ask, but they said 84% of hiring managers disqualify candidates that do not ask questions because they think they're not interested in the role. Whether that's right or wrong is not up for debate here because we can have our own opinions on that. But the reality is that's a deciding factor. So you're doing yourself a disservice by not asking relevant questions in that interview. And one of my favorite questions to ask, and this is what I always give people, Xerox copy it, steal it, it's yours to use. But one of the most important questions I think you can ask in that interview is, what does success look like in this position 6 months from now? The reason why I love asking that question is it gives me the ultimate game plan to run with on day one. What's funny is I was just talking to my team lead at my new position, and I asked him that question because he was one of the people that interviewed me. And he said, you've hit this ground running. Like, you only been here 8 days and you've already got everything set up. You've already completed this and this. I already know the game plan. For the next 6 months, I'm adhering to exactly what he told me, whether he forgets it or not. But I now know that on some level or another, this is going to be something that he's judging me by. Why should I discredit myself? Do your research. Last thing that I want to share, and it's not necessarily related to interviews, but it's very relevant to something here. Someone reached out to me not too long ago about some information, and they were trying to get their first job in tech. One of my biggest advices has always been, it's great to learn whatever tech stack that you're learning, but please make sure you're doing the research to see if it's relevant in your local area. Don't just listen to somebody random on social media that says, learn this is the big language. It may have no application where you are. If you learn the local demand of your market, you will never run out of opportunities. Doing that research is very relevant. And so, for example, if you're in Memphis, Tennessee looking for a job, there are a couple languages that I'd probably steer you towards. C#, Java, especially .NET, Java, C#, Java, JavaScript. These would be the staples that I would gear anybody towards in this market. You may find a handful of opportunities in this and that, et cetera, but the reality is in Memphis, this is king. That may not be the case somewhere else. That's why when people tell me what language should I learn, I'm like, that's crazy to ask somebody in Memphis, Tennessee or Dallas, Texas, what language I should learn, and I live in New York. I don't know what. Look at the job ads, talk to some people, go to meetups. How am I supposed to know? I could tell you something that's completely wrong, but in my mind, I believe that's completely right. Do the research. And somebody reached out saying, I'm looking for something. I said, hey, you said you've been learning .NET. Utilize that, leverage that. You're in the market for it. They changed their position, and he just told me, congratulations, by the way, Monday he signed his first job offer letter for his first job in tech. That's what I want to see. Clap, y'all. Clap. Online, I hope you're clapping too. That's a big deal. But that's what I'm saying. It's so important to apply that research and position yourself as the most valuable candidate for a role. Make sure you're using that positioning very accurately. I see the claps, y'all. If you don't see it, I see it. But please understand something, especially when it comes to these factors. You got to position yourself. And last thing I want to share, and I'm going to go down the road because I saw some questions. I got the Q&A pulled up here. But please stop going, and I'm constantly trying to make people understand this. Stop going into this like begging mindset where you're like, I desperately need a job. Please give me a job. If you give me a job, I'm going to do everything. Just give me Stop. Nobody wants to do that. People aren't in the business of doing charity work unless they work for a charity. Stop putting that work on somebody. Like, I mean, I know James I get it all the time. Hey, I need a job. Can you give me a job? I was like, how'd you know I was hiding this job until somebody asked? How did you know? I'm so glad somebody finally asked. I've been on social media for 2.5 years, and you're the first person to reach out. Thank you. No. Go in with a value mindset. I am valuable. I've learned a valuable in-demand set of information and skills. I can apply this, and it reflects the bottom line of a business. I can add impact. And if you bring me in, I'll add so much value that you're going to fall in love with what I can do. That's the mindset you need to have. And if you shift and pivot that, you're going to find yourself with opportunities. Great question came in, and I saved this here. And it's one of my favorite questions. Oops, what just happened here? Okay. Oh no, not this one. What are some skills besides the ability to code make developers valuable? How do you identify that on a resume? How would you describe that in an interview? What are skills like that? And since we keep leaving James at the end, we'll go to James first.
For the one I feel like I'm least prepared to answer for. Maybe this is a double-edged sword. I go back to content for myself. Content can take form in a lot of different ways. People think of content as being like long YouTube videos or blog articles. Content is a tweet. Content is a message that you share in Discord or Slack, anything like that. And so I think it is one of the best ways to show a couple of things. It shows your desire to learn, your like excitement to learn, your excitement to be moving into the career that you're trying to get into. I think it also shows your ability to communicate technical concepts in a way that other people can understand, which is I would say that like one skill in my experience that helped me the most in my career that's non-technical is just being able to communicate. That's a super underrated thing. It seems very obvious, but going back to confidence in interviews, like if you're not a good communicator, you're not gonna come across as confident. But at the end of the day, people need leaders on a team, and you don't necessarily have to be like the team lead, but you can step in, help communicate things to technical and non-technical people. Do that in a confident way. Be able to help brainstorm and collaborate with teammates to come up with the problem to solve problems. And I always go back to content for that. For me, especially, like I do content full time now, so I'm a little bit biased in that regard. But again, it doesn't have to be spend a ton of time writing a blog post or doing a video. But one of the biggest things that I've seen people do in their learning journey and have the most success for people early on in their career, and especially getting their first job, is documenting their journey in some way. That is content, whether it's a tweet, whether it's like a five sentence thing a day. I got a guy I'm following on TikTok that's going through a boot camp, and he's doing every single day, like day 8, this is what we're doing. And every day he's like, I'm overwhelmed because we're learning all these things. Like, what better way for other people also to understand how difficult a process, but how worthy or like how worth it it's going to be in the end. So I always recommend to people, like, share whatever your format is, just get in the habit of sharing, practice your communication skills, because that's going to pay off before trying to get interviews. It's going to pay off in interviews. And then also when you're on a team, being able to communicate to your team, upper management, potentially get yourself some visibility. That's been a big kind of stepping stone, I think, for me in my career.
That was a great answer. I'm going to piggyback off of some of that and just say, strongly stress communication. Communication. I mean, just being able to talk to people, being able to relate to people, relate to your team, right? You're all on the same team. Maybe you have a problem you're not sure how to solve and you need help. You have to be able to communicate that you need help. You have to be able to reach out, and if you're doing one piece of work that is going to impact another piece of work, you have to talk to the team. You have to talk to your managers. You have to talk to your product managers and be able to relate to that. You want to make sure you're on the same page. You don't want to just listen to something that is coming down is going to be part of the job, something work you need to do. You don't ask questions. You're like, well, they just said that, and you just assume things. Like, no, that's not going to work. You got to ask questions. You got to make sure that you're on the same page with everybody. So communication is key to problem solving. And that comes in like 18,000 different forms, from, actual problems and day to day that you encounter in your life that how do you got to get creative to solve. Or, I mean, I like puzzles. I do daily puzzles. It helps with just thinking about things in a different way, how to approach problems in a way that, easiest way to get from point A to point B. It might not be the clearest thing you see, and it might need to be something you think about for a little bit, but problem solving in any way. And, the third thing I'd say, well, I guess it goes with communication, but to be confident, right? Be confident in yourself. And more than that, even, I'd scratch that. Be confident. Be nice. Be a nice person. You know who people want to work with? Nice people. You be nice, you be eager, you be confident, it goes a long way.
So I'll piggyback on everything they just said. But truly, guys, communication is key, because you're learning as an individual, but you'll have to work as a team, learning how to respect each other's differences as well as things you have in common, because it is that group think when you get together, that think tank. Because when you're thinking about problem solving, especially, you're thinking about what you're considering at that moment, not those unintended consequences that can happen. So being able to communicate vetted thought, that is everything, because creativity without sustainability leads us into worlds of troubles in the IT world at times, especially in the industry as patient healthcare. So communication is key. Remember, you are a superstar, but if you fail and the team fails, it's a failure. If you win and the team fails, it's still a failure. So you rise and fall as a team. And sometimes we have to remember that. And then sometimes our answer is not going to be the best answer. Doesn't mean it wasn't a good answer, but it just won't work for that. So consider parking lotting things, that it didn't work for this situation, but maybe next time. So we can't be Michael Jordan because the Bulls still lost when he had 45 points. But I say that because most people won't even hire you if they don't think you're a good fit that'll work as a team member. And the next thing, problem solving, because oftentimes we have to translate business requirements into technical solutions, and being able to, one, to be able to do the translation, two, switch from non-technical conversations to technical when you're back with your group is everything, because otherwise you get the deer in the headlight look like, huh? You're speaking French. So understanding your audience is everything as well. And then be confident. Celebrate your small wins. We, on my team, we had a happy dance. So we all get up when one person gets something, we get up and we celebrate. We do the happy dance because, one, he said, be nice, be kind. It costs us nothing to be kind, and you never know what your coworker next to you is going through. So when you're dealing with people, remember, kindness takes you a whole lot further. Remember, people get frustrated, so it's not a personal attack. And one thing I would say to you, and I'm getting ready to pass the mic, you guys are gonna go and grow and you're gonna be amazing. But remember, when problems come up, they're just problems. So attack problems and not people, and you'll get a whole lot further in solving problems.
To be honest, I love that, especially the kind part. Like, even you notice when you're talking to somebody if they're kind or not. Like, you can kind of gauge that. And so if you're not a kind individual, let's work on that. But I would say it definitely like transcends just basic conversation. The other thing that I'd like to point out here, many people have said confidence is a big key, and I definitely agree. And some people say confidence comes from being confident in itself, which to some levels I'll agree with. But I also truly believe confidence sometimes comes from being comfortable. And oftentimes, interviews are kind of designed in a way where you won't be the most comfortable. And one way to kind of circumvent that is, before going into an interview, prepare a couple talking points that you feel the most comfortable talking about. And when that conversation is in an area where you don't feel you have the confidence, where you don't feel like you have the comfort, navigate those waters to where you need to be, because that's where you're going to create your confidence again and rebuild the comfort in that scary kind of scenario. So highly recommend that. You don't need to build 10 or 20 talking points, but maybe two or three. The other thing is, I think it's incredibly powerful to make a very strong elevator pitch. The first 45 seconds of that interview can dictate the narrative for the next 45 minutes. Remember one key thing about an interview. An interview is a fact-finding mission. They only have the information that you've presented so far on your resume and your LinkedIn profile. That's it. They don't have some FBI agent sitting in the back saying, let me find out about Danny over here. Danny applied for this job. We need the research. No, you gave them a piece of paper. Now they're going to ask you about it. Your resume, your LinkedIn, the ultimate goal is to pique interest. It's not your autobiography. That's the interview. If you can divulge the most important pieces of information early on, they can now start having very in-depth conversations on the information you provided. But if you withhold certain details and they have to kind of fight to get it out of you, maybe you end up missing a lot of the most important details on the things that you bring to the conversation at the table. Maybe you forget to mention XYZ because in the whole, realm and craziness of that interview, you got kind of confused or forgot something, or you got flustered. Prepare that elevator pitch. List out some things that you've done. And I remember talking to somebody, they're like, well, I don't have all these accolades. I don't have all this stuff. I don't have this volunteer experience. Go get it. It's free to volunteer, y'all. It don't cost you nothing. What else can you do in your life that's a win-win-win? You're supporting your community. You're doing something great that doesn't expire that you can put on your resume. You're networking with other caring individuals. It's free. Go volunteer at a homeless shelter. Go volunteer at a coding boot camp. Go volunteer at a meetup. There's so many areas you can volunteer in, and now you're giving back, and you can talk about that. Hiring managers love that. Everybody loves that. Who's going to be like, I can't believe they volunteered again. Ugh, this guy. Ugh, the work. No. People love that. Give back. Do something. Prime question that I was going to present to everybody. I was asked outside, and it's a relevant question because I see it in the chat earlier as well. What do I do when all these roles say 2 years of experience? I don't have experience. I'm trying to get my first job. What am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to do? Be born a developer? Like, where do I get this experience from? I saw a post the other day. A guy gave his kid an HTML book at age 3. He's like, I'm trying to get him ready. 20 years experience for a lot of these roles. I'm not going to give my answer yet. I'll give it at the end, but I do want to see what perspectives are here. But understand, you can do things to offset that. And to give you an idea, my very first job in tech wanted 4 years of experience and a college degree. Unfortunately that we're in university grounds right now, I had neither. So I never had the luxury of going to college, and I didn't have the 4 years of experience. Still got the job. Every job offer I got before that, they all wanted a degree and experience. I didn't have it. There's ways you can offset it, though. So I think we can start with James this time. What do you do as a candidate when you're trying to apply for roles and they all want 2 years of experience?
Good start twice in a row. This is good. For extra context, I think the one from the chat is 3 plus 5 plus 10 years of experience for every job. And so I think the answer that everyone will probably touch on is like, you don't need to meet all of the minimum requirements. I think like someone threw out, I think half earlier. You can kind of gauge that for yourself. I think the things you need to pay attention to are like, what are the skills that they're looking for? What are the technologies that they're working for? How much experience do you have with those, right? Because I've been, before Lawrence is there, I've been on a team at FedEx where I had just started learning web development on my own through a course on Udemy. First time ever I'd ever touched JavaScript, HTML, CSS. And I walked into a team that was building web applications and pretty quickly realized that I knew much more than everyone on that team. Now, it's not because they were not good developers. It's because they were brand new to it and they weren't doing the outside research and working on the projects and doing the extra stuff that I was doing. In 6 months, I was not officially, but I was the lead web developer. Had I known what I was walking into, like I could have been able to communicate that experience to say like, I love this. This is what I do. Like you can find somebody that's got 4 years of experience. My 6 months, I can guarantee you, is as valuable or more. In addition to my excitement to continue to learn, because I can't tell you how many times I walked into work to solve a problem that I'd already solved at home because I'd done that on a side project or a tutorial that I followed. Now, again, I want to be conscious of like work-life balance. You don't need to like do all these hours after work. This is stuff I was just excited about. So I get to walk in, be unofficially a team lead for web development in 6 months because I was already doing these things. So it's all about like confidence and crafting your story, being able to articulate why you're excited about a role, being able to talk about yourself confidently, say like, hey, you're using Angular. That's cool. I've used React. I haven't used Angular. I'd be super excited to learn about it. And here's 5 things I know about Angular because I've done my research. What people don't quite do enough, I think, is draw parallels. They see another language or framework and they assume I don't have anything to talk about, like I have no talking points. But if you're a React developer and they use Angular or vice versa, go and do an hour-long tutorial just to get a feel for what it's like so you can have some talking points going in there to sound more like an Angular developer. Those skills are going to translate. And one more example of like not meeting the threshold. I was at FedEx and I don't know how to phrase, I guess I don't know how to phrase this, but like there was no prefix before my title. I was a regular software developer at the time, not associate and not senior. And I had a conversation with my manager, like I'm rolling up on 5 years formally experience, which is the minimum for senior. Had a conversation, told her this is what I want. I also want to be a leader. I want to communicate more. I want to like be learning the new technologies and teach that to the team. And as far as I know, like I can kind of say I'm the only person that this happened to, like probably not, but not many cases did this happen where she came back and said like, we've got a skip level position that we want to see if you're interested in. Like skip the entire level that I was shooting for, which the rest of my team at FedEx had been working at FedEx 5 to 10 years at least to get to that level. And I had been there a year and a half, but I was able to communicate. I was able to show leadership. I was able to show that I was excited, that I was going to learn, that I could communicate to upper leadership. I was able to show all the things that we talked about And at the end of the day, like those thresholds are completely arbitrary. Like it's a thing that they can put on a paper to weed people out, but it's always negotiable. So you have to figure out to communicate your why and all the confidence and things that we talk about to make that negotiable and make it make sense for them, because you're going to be that person that's going to do the job better than even the person that has more experience.
Either way, it doesn't matter. I was just offering. I'm going to rephrase the question in a different way that I feel like you might be hinting at and trying to ask whoever did ask the question. Instead of saying, these jobs say 3+ years, 5+ years, 10+ years, what you're really trying to ask yourself is, how am I going to know when I'm ready to apply to a job that says it has a certain number of years experience if I don't have that? And the real answer is you don't. You don't know. You won't know. And you definitely won't know if you don't apply. If you have 3 days of experience, apply to the 3 years job, okay? If you feel like you're ready, if you feel like you know enough to where you can do what it is that they're asking, which you may or may not know, just apply. You won't know. You won't know if they're interested in you until you apply. Case in point, first job that I got, my first full-time job in the tech industry, I was going back to school. I was here full-time, trying to get my second degree because my first degree didn't work out. And I had to do something. I had to work. I had to have supplemental income. I worked on campus for a little bit at the Name Data Networking Research Lab here. But then when I got into the master's program here, funding was only for undergrads. So I wasn't allowed to work there anymore. But I needed a job. I could have gotten a job, waiting tables or working at Starbucks, which I think I did apply, actually, now that I think about it. Didn't get that one. But I really wanted the experience. Like, I'm in school, I'm learning. I want to be able to put something on my resume that's a job in tech. I don't care what it is. Funny enough, I had been to like a career fair here thing like a year before when I was just first starting out, and I collected some pamphlets. I went back through the pamphlets that I saved. I looked up the local companies that were here at the career fair, looked on their job website, found a job that was open for a data analyst. Data analysts needed to know SQL. I didn't know SQL. I'd taken like 3 CS courses here. They don't touch on that. I mean, for most of it, to be honest with you. And, but that was something that was asked of me. And I knew that it was going to be part of the interview. I had 3 days to the interview. I learned SQL in 3 days. Now, did I learn all of SQL in 3 days? No. But I learned the basics enough to be able to talk about it and sound like I knew what I was doing. And I did to a certain degree. But what I learned when I got that job, I did get that job, it was awesome, was immeasurable, because that wasn't something that was taught. It was something that I gained. I gained that experience when I was there. Didn't have it when I started, but I took what I needed to do, just whatever resource. I learned a little bit, and that was enough. Does that mean that if you learn something for 3 days that you can get a job? No, not necessarily. But if you take your time, like Danny mentioned earlier, learn however it is you need to learn, apply to that job. If it says it needs 3 years and you've been studying for 8 months, apply. You don't know. But they do just put that stuff on there sometimes to filter people out. And don't be one of those people that get filtered out.
Okay, I love that. And here's one of the things that I think as a hiring manager need to share. Some companies gauge by the length of time at that particular institution it takes to move up to a certain level, and how often it takes them to offer classes to get their particular associates up to speed. And I don't look at that per se, but the experience that you do have. You may have been in the field 6 months or a year, and you have more experience than someone who's been doing it for 7 years because they don't have the exposure to everything I'm looking for. So what I'm going to do is invite you in. I'm going to look at the resume. What have you done? And oftentimes what I find is that people who are 1 year in, 2 years in, are ready to be seniors because they have the knowledge, they've done the work, and at other companies, they've been given more opportunities and more exposure. So from that myself, I've learned to tweak it and say, if they have these things, send them to me and I'll gauge from there. Don't be afraid to apply, because you may be more qualified than a person that's been there 10, based on what the training has been, what the opportunities have been. And I've seen people come in with less years but more experience and exposure, and they end up leading the team because of their exposures and opportunities. And that does not always have to equate that you did this on the job. That's why projects are so important. Things that also you do as a volunteer. You may volunteer and be the media person or the technical person at your church or local community organization. For me, that matters, because you're still getting that experience. And that shows me that you're passionate about it outside of here and not just a paycheck. So you're going to be willing to learn and continue to do things. So apply, guys, because like I say, years are often measured by how long it takes their associates to get to that level, and not necessarily the experience and the exposure that a person actually has.
A lot of really valuable points have been shared that I completely agree with, by the way. A couple things. Number one, when it comes to the years, the most safest way I could say this, I don't give a damn. Like, I don't look at that. I don't pay attention to that. What I do look at is the specific title that they're using to advertise the role. If they say they're looking for a software engineer, we're ready to have a conversation. If they say they're looking for a senior software developer, there's no conversation to be had. I think they have dead set on the experience. They're not ready to onboard, because if they're willing to take on a mid-level dev, they know there's going to be ramp-up time. They know there's going to be training involved. So you could downgrade that role. But if they specifically say, I need a senior developer, that basically means we can't talk. Anything else, conversations are open to. But here's the thing. You need to ensure and make sure you de-risk yourself as a candidate. Here's the thing. When a company hires you, especially for your first role, they're not hiring you because they're like, we need junior devs. No company theoretically needs junior devs. They're doing it because they're trying to increase their workforce, and they're trying to make sure they're getting developers with the habits that they need and require. They're investing in you. People don't make risky investments. You must de-risk yourself in this case. How do you do that? The projects that you make, the way that you can approach problems, the way you can discuss this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all the things that we've discussed already. But applying that de-risk factor by saying, I'm not risky. I can implement and do. So oftentimes when I'm getting people like, nobody's hiring juniors, and I look at their projects and say, to-do app, yeah, nobody's going to, a to-do app. Maybe you'll get lucky here and there, but the reality is companies want someone that's gone a little bit further in the understanding of these concepts and that can display it. When it comes to the technical interview, just because it's a technical interview, it doesn't necessarily mean you can't increase the value or potential of them seeing you as a stronger candidate. How do you do that? Open your mouth and talk. Don't think what you're doing, speak it. Especially if it's a whiteboard coding situation, because they're not giving you a whiteboard coding problem to necessarily be cruel or whatever it may be. Some companies, I'll be honest, let's be real. But for the vast majority, that's not going to be the case. They're doing it because they want to see how you approach the problem. What is your analytical thinking? Are you actually problem solving this, or did you just memorize this route to solve this? Speak it. Let them understand what you're going through. I can't tell you how many times I underperformed on a whiteboard coding interview with the code, but I overperformed with the communication, showing off my soft skills, talking to them how I'm getting to this. They said, you know what? He has a lot of what we can work with. Let's give him an offer. That's how you're de-risking yourself. Just because it's a technical interview doesn't mean it's a last opportunity for you to stand out. Utilize that. De-risk yourself. You don't want to be seen as risky. The other thing is, ask yourself these 4 questions, and you can see right now if you should apply for jobs or not. Number 1, are you allowing yourself to apply for the job based on the time you've spent learning this? or because you know what you can implement in a company? Number two, do you have the necessary things required to stand out as a candidate, meaning the projects, the LinkedIn, the resume, etc.? Number three, if you were given the task to build a website in the stack of your choice that you're trying to get a job in, can you do it without being given a step-by-step tutorial? It's okay if you Google something, it's okay if you research, but if you still need to be handheld through the process, you're not ready. But if you can at least implement on a basic level, I'm not saying I need the next, Google implementation search engine optimization algorithm here. I'm just saying, but a website that performs XYZ, can you do that without a step-by-step tutorial? Last question is, do you at least match 50% of the job description? I'm not saying 75, I'm not saying 100, at least half. Do you know the main things that they're looking for? If so, apply. Worst case scenario, they say no. Best case scenario, they say yes. Or at the very least, you get an opportunity to have a conversation to showcase how valuable you really are. But don't go in saying, they're looking for somebody that has, let's say, experience with external libraries, and you have none, and you don't discuss that in your job description, or at least formulate your resume around that so you can stand out as a candidate. You need to address the concerns in the job description so you can stand out and really make an impression. Oftentimes people do the spray and pray method. It don't work. You can't, you know how many times, matter of fact, prime example, we had somebody in my Discord apply to 1,000 jobs in 3 months. Didn't get a single call back. I said, that's a hell of a ROI, return on investment. You invested all that time, not a single call. I said, how do you apply to 1,000 jobs in 3 months? Spray and pray, one resume. 3 weeks. We gave him some tips. He adjusted his resume. 3 weeks, signed an offer letter. How? You started paying attention to the conversation and addressing those questions. That's how you stand out. That's how, if you feel like you're literally walking in mud, that's how you stand out. Last question that we're going to get to. What was the last question, Isaac? I can't see it from here. Wasn't there one more? What are some careers in tech industry that folks could consider besides software engineering? Yeah, I just talked about that the other day. Have you seen people successfully transition into those? We'll start with you this time.
So I'm so glad you asked. One of the fields that I'm in, and I got in by way of a fluke in the Air Force, but it's called integration. And in the healthcare world, is technical integration, and it's at the heart of everything we do at the hospital, at the facilities. You allow different applications to talk to each other. So from being admitted to the hospital, that's an integration, because patient demographic has to flow to various disparate systems, and they need a method to talk, and that is HO7. From there, an order is going to be placed. The doctor's going to order some exams. They're going to take you down. Orders, results, they have to flow. That's integration. At St. Jude, we do clinical research. That is at the heart of everything we do. And so those protocols have to go somewhere. We have to know who's on study, who's off study. That is integration. And I love it, because we become virtual providers by way of sitting behind a keyboard. We don't physically touch them at the bedside, but the work we do through integration, it does. And so there are a myriad of ways to get into integration. It's a very nuanced and niche field, because not a lot of people are into that right now. And we're always looking. And the great part about it, because there is not a lot of people into that field, you get the opportunity to work remote. And so with those things in mind, it is a great opportunity to become a virtual provider that treats the patient by sitting behind the keyboard, doing your very best work. And so I challenge you guys, because I know software engineer is pretty much the standard. I'm entering in as a software engineer, and my engineers are integration software engineers, but they are still engineers because they code, they do JavaScript, some things Java, we use XML, JSON, and some we have to do .NET. So there's a myriad of things we do, even Fire, where we're doing integrations through interoperability. So I would encourage you guys, if you have questions, I am Pamela Wolf on LinkedIn. We are always looking to bring people in, even through, we have short terms where people come in on internships to learn more. And I'm always willing to talk about that. I love what I do. And I think that you guys that are out there would be interested too. So that is my spiel for integration, and I'm going to pass it on.
So there's lots of different things you can do to work in the tech industry that's not a software engineer. There's so many things. If you still want to be very tech focused, you could be a data analyst. You could be a data scientist. Working with data is a big deal and can be more lucrative than software engineering in certain aspects. If you like data, if you like logic problems, if you like, some scripting, you don't have to go too heavy into programming if you don't want to. There's a lot of data work that can be done. Also not terribly high of a bar to break into. Like I said, SQL, 3 days, get a job. I'm going to say it can happen. It can happen to you. It's easy to do. And the other thing, UX design. Maybe you hate programming, but you like messing with websites. You like how things look. If you like the color and the shape of buttons, dear Lord, become a UX designer. You know what I mean? I'm going to brag a little bit here. You talk about people that successfully transitioned into the tech industry. My wife was on the radio here in Memphis for 10 years. It wasn't going so well. She was kind of tired of it. She was stagnant. She wasn't learning. She wasn't progressing. She decided that she wanted to try her hand at something else. She used the skills she had. She had a broadcast journalism degree. She had lots of experience, in this field. She has had great communication skills. She's really good at talking with people, really good at working with journalists because she was a journalist in a sense herself. And she pivoted into the tech industry. Now she works for a company that has a big local presence here in the tech industry, and she's a PR manager, and she manages PR for the tech industry. So she's, more ingrained in tech, in her, she did this during the pandemic. It's okay. It's okay that it took me going back to school and getting a degree and doing that for 3 years to get back into the tech industry. And she did it, in a few months. I'm not bitter about it at all. But you can do it. You take the experience you have, you take the skills you have. There's lots of things you can do. You can do data, you can do UX, you can do PR, you can go into project management or product management. That's just herding cats. Do you know how to herd cats? Do you want to do that for a living and just get people to have get projects done, get work done, and make tickets in Jira and make sure that have meetings? It might sound boring, but some people really like it and are passionate about it. You just find what you do. There's so many jobs. You don't have to be a software engineer if you don't want to. If you want to work in the tech industry, there's lots of stuff.
It's going to be weird, but I'm going to brag about my wife too. So my wife has been in hospitality industry for years, since we graduated. And it's always been the kind of thing, something goes wrong, have to be there, have to answer the phone. If there's an event at night, have to be there, have to answer the phone, etc. Rarely ever had much control over her hours, never made much money. Loved what she did, loved being able to bring things together and make events happen. Loved that, but was never... We had very different experiences work culture wise because I had always been in tech companies. Anyway, job came open on my team at Auth0 when I was there on the developer advocacy team to plan events and do sponsorships for Auth0. And went through the interview process, got the job, tripled her salary, now has stock options, limited vacation. We just got back from a trip to Europe because she had events in London and Berlin, and we went to Paris in between. I just tagged along for fun. So to all of those points, being in tech, working for a tech company, they have every job. They've got accounting, they've got project management, they've got experimental projects like R&D types. They've got everything that you could think of that a regular company would have. So those jobs exist. So one, if you're just something completely not programming related, still super worth it to get into tech if you find the right company because of the money, the benefits, the culture, etc. Such a game-changing thing for her and for me, because now I can go full-time for myself because she has health benefits to cover me. Another thing that I'll mention, so I've been in developer advocacy for several years. If you're not familiar with that, A lot of it is public speaking. It's speaking at conferences, talking at meetups. It's helping educate the community on a product or a piece of a company that you work for. And that's something that I've enjoyed. I randomly fell into it coming out of college. I applied for a software developer job at Microsoft. I didn't get it. I applied for a TAM role, a technical account manager at Microsoft, that I didn't get. The people who didn't get it, it was in-person interviews. They sent back to the hotel in a limo together, like a really sad limo together. So that was really weird. But they gave me another shot, and they asked me if I wanted to do technical evangelism. I was like, I don't know what the hell that is, but Microsoft is cool, so I'm in. And so I interviewed and talked about the Harry Potter app and things that I built, and started my career at Microsoft giving presentations to rooms full of developers that had been developing longer than I've been alive, and kind of developed that as a career. So it's an amazing outlet for me to have this super technical piece, and then also a really social piece, like communication skills, public speaking, creating content, all those things, which now leads to me doing content full time for myself, which is basically a dream come true. So I think that is one specific type of role. We've heard from a lot of different ones, but there's really anything that you want to do, a tech company has. And for the culture, the salary, assuming you find the right place, benefits overall, it's really why would you not make more money to do the same thing that you're already doing and have a better work-life balance at the same time?
So one other thing, and I had a conversation with someone in the room, but another way to transition, and this is in the healthcare world, our clinical staff, they are so familiar and intimate with the process, the workflows, that it's easy for them to transition over as an IT clinical analyst. So being able to troubleshoot applications, to be able to develop workflows that help with the technical integrations. Those are all things that can be done. And I think the other person, he was in a clinical role as well, but that is another way, yes, to get in the door, is your clinical experience can translate and be a benefit in the IT world. So things like that you don't think are valuable are things that could help you transition over.
So a couple things I'll share here. A lot of the jobs that you can get besides just being a developer totally have been shared here. Like, just because you want to be in tech doesn't necessarily mean it has to be with code. To be completely honest with you, code is not for everybody. Like, just being real about it. Like, there are some people that excel beyond eons of length in other fields besides writing code, right? So if it's not something you like, you don't enjoy the process, you don't like, I'll be honest with you, I've never really loved writing code. I love the problem solving aspect. That's where I get the enjoyment from. Like, how can I solve this problem that everybody's stuck on, right? How can I deliver a solution for that? I enjoy that. Writing in React, Angular, I don't care what language it is, what tool it is. If you got a paycheck with my name on it, I'm writing it in that language. Simple as that, right? So you can do this in any language, any tool, any field. Some people excel in UI, UX. Like, that's a great field and a ton of money. Some people excel, guess what? Let's say you suck at writing code, become a manager. Apparently a lot of people do that, So you can do that and do really well, right? But you could also, guess what? You could be a recruiter. Tech recruiters make a ton of money, great income, great living. Guess what? You get to support people in doing that as well. There's nothing wrong with that. To be honest, I almost became a recruiter before becoming a developer. I'm glad I stuck with what I did. But I mean, that was exactly where I was going, but I didn't want to put a monetary value behind a lot of the stuff that I do. So as everybody knows, everything I do is completely for free for people. Like, I'll never charge you for it. That's never going to be my goal. It's to help y'all. Please make sure that you've paid attention, you've taken notes, you've made connections. We're going to be networking in person in a second. But please, even online, I still see we have so many people still online. Thank you for hanging out. I hope it's been worth the time that you've been here. I also want to make a huge shout out again for those that are here. A big supporter that has been a partner of ours. I started GDG Memphis. That chapter has grown tremendously. We have Code Connector. We also have the Memphis Technology Foundation. Amazing groups, amazing meetups, amazing people, great Slack channel, part of the Memphis community. Highly recommend checking that out. But a great partner of ours that has been with us for years now has been Vaco. And they don't really monetize anything that we do. They're just here supporting the community. So if that's a connection you want to make, if you think you can get some relevant information, please reach out to Justin and Robert over there hanging out. They're here literally just They haven't pitched nothing. They're not over here selling nothing. They just came on their own volition to try and help folks out, answer questions. So if you got questions for them, highly recommend it. There's some hiring managers here. I mean, Miss Pamela White, she's here right now. Ask her some questions. But also online, please be very intentional with the actions that you're taking online. Don't just say, well, nothing's coming my way. It's not going to. You know what I always say? Oftentimes the most lucky are the most active. Become very active and intentional with them. Stop waking up like it's an accident in the morning saying something didn't happen today. Be intentional. Put your shoes on. The biggest key for success is putting your shoes on. You can't start walking outside without some shoes on. Put some shoes on, start working. I'm not saying complete a marathon, but can you start walking a couple steps? Never know what would happen if you start doing that. So please, I truly hope this was worth your time. I hope it was worth the energy. Please tweet at me. If you've got some value out of this, please tweet it out. Tag me in it. I'm more than happy to retweet it. Never know who can benefit off of the notes that you took from this. I know there's a lot of notes that I've been taking as well mentally to add to some talks, but hopefully this was well worth it. Last thing I want to say for Memphis area, please, if you haven't already, check out the Code Connector website. Amazing group. Any events that GDG Memphis does, I'm still going to be supporting this group, even though I'm not located in the Memphis area anymore. I'm going to still be coming here. But please, they're going to constantly be putting on meetups. Check those out as well. I highly recommend checking out Memtech if you're in the Memphis area. They have a great Slack channel, great community. Highly recommend checking that out. I definitely do have a little bit of bias when it comes towards the Code Connector community and GDG Memphis, because it's exactly where I started. And I'm big fans of everything that they do. A couple of their leaders are here as well, so please have a conversation with them. If there's anything that any of us can do to help you get closer to that B position from the A position, please let us know. That's exactly why we're here. And please don't be shy to come to meetups in this building. They're amazing partners. They're the reason why we're even in this room. The pictures are gonna look so good, y'all. But they're the reason why we're here. We've been having a blast, and they do all kinds of events. I mean, even today there was another event going on. You never know we'll be here, so please check out the fit. Outside of that, any last words y'all want to share before we end this?
Did anybody have any quick questions? We do it afterwards.
One thing people usually don't do, they listen to all this and they walk away. If you're not having a conversation with someone that's offering free advice or conversation, that's on you. Like, the brutal honesty is, like, most people don't take advantage of what's around them, but you got people up here that are saying we'd love to do that, and we've got other people in the audience that would love to do that. So take advantage of it while it's here, whether it's in person or a follow-up conversation on Slack or Twitter or whatever. Take advantage of the resources that are out there.
Closing remarks, is that what we're doing? Closing remarks. If you're thinking about trying to transition into tech, you haven't done it yet, you're thinking about learning, or you're starting to learn, not sure if it's right for you, give it a shot, give it a try. I mean, you don't have to be pushed into it, but you have to want to do it. You have to want to give it a try. What I was doing before I decided to go back, I was working at a car dealership downtown here in Memphis as a marketing manager, which was just a made-up title. I took pictures of cars and managed a website. It was going nowhere, and I didn't have a career. That was a job. It was the only job I could get during a different recession, not the current one. I knew that it wasn't going to work for me. I had student loans. I wanted to live a life. It wasn't gonna work. So I went to things I liked. I thought tech was something good. I liked technology. I learned online at Code Academy. I did a little bit of Code Academy, and I decided to go back to school. You don't have to go back to school, but if that's an environment you learn well in, go back to school. If you want to learn online, and then apply to jobs and just give it a shot. You don't know where you might be in a couple of years. So do it.
And I close with this. Everyone's here because you're interested in getting started. Don't be afraid. Don't let others talk you out of your next level, because oftentimes people, when they're afraid to dream out loud, they don't want us to either. So you're here because you took the first step. Like Danny said, you put your shoes on. You're online, you put your shoes on. Don't be afraid to step out on that journey in faith. I've been doing this over 30 years. I've learned so much. I still learn. And I don't work a day in my life because it's what I love to do. And so, guys, technology allows us to do so many things for so many people. And I'm growing now in leadership simply because I want to be that ladder to keep opening doors for people to walk through. I've done my time. I love coding. I love all the various things, sysadmin, all of those things that they shared. I've done those, but I'm journeying up so that I can open doors for the next generation to come in. And that doesn't equate to age, but the next level of the next generation who want to enter this amazing world. And one of the things we always say is experience, but how can you get it if we don't give the opportunities? So my goal is to create seats at the table where you can enter in and get that experience. I wish you much success. We are here. I'm on LinkedIn. I love IT. So guys, hit me up. We can have conversations. As a matter of fact, I have an open position on my team that I'm going to start recruiting for the 1st of November. Pamela Wolf on LinkedIn.
You know, I think something that I've seen online and here is everybody's here with a purpose. And the biggest thing that I hope all of y'all do, and it's something that I wish I did for such a long time, is just get out your own damn way. I can't tell you how many times I sabotaged my own entry into tech simply because I told myself I wasn't ready. I can't do this. I can't do that. Like I remember this so distinctly. I was helping people land jobs in tech before I had a job in tech. And someone very near and dear to me said this to me, and I've never forgotten it. And he said, Danny, you're amazing at helping others and you're crappy at helping yourself. And I'm like, you're right. I won't get out of my own damn way. And I kept saying to myself, like, I'd go to meetups directly from work, still smelling like fried chicken. And someone jokingly said this to me quite a few times, actually. Like, oh, it's Popeyes. Popeyes is here. Because 15 minutes after the meetup started, the whole room smells like chicken. My nose got dead to the smell. I never smelled it. And I got so much imposter syndrome based off of that, even though it was a lighthearted joke. But I instantly realized I don't match up to a lot of people in this room. There are people in this room right now that have a degree. There are people in this room that have seen the inside of an office building. I've never seen the inside of an office building. Only what I've seen on TV. Why would they ever want to have a conversation with me? It is so important. If you don't leave with anything today, just leave with one thing. Get out your own damn way. Please get out of your own damn way and see what will happen. If you fall, that's fine. They make Band-Aids. But get out of your way. So many people are so afraid of failure that they'll do that like balancing dance to try and avoid it, only to eventually feel the failure. At least fail and learn something from it. Get something from the moment as opposed to, well, I hurt myself, I'm not going to get back up again. Please get out your own. I can't tell you how many times I would literally leave my job, go to a job interview, I would change in the bathroom, and I'd be freaking myself out the whole time because like, Danny, they don't want you. Like I would literally be psyching myself out on the way to the interview saying, Danny, they don't want you. You smell like chicken. They're going to smell you within a couple minutes. They want somebody who has a degree. They want somebody with a qualification. They want somebody with experience. They don't want you. Why are you even going? Why are you wasting your time? I'm so glad I ignored my imposter syndrome. I'm so glad I ignored the haters. God knows how many haters that came out and told me I couldn't do it. I'm so glad I didn't listen to my coworkers who said, stay in the gas station business. This is for people like us. You're not made for coding. It's for smart folks. I'm so glad because I got so excited. I told them, hey, there's this thing about coding. And they're like, what are you doing? This is where we are. My doubts, my imposter syndrome, my insecurities. I made it. I'm Danny Thompson, and I'm a software engineer, and I've got a seat right next to me, and I can't wait to welcome you into this industry too. You absolutely got this. See you all on the next one. Bye, everybody.